I don't really think we need to do an intro. If you need one, watch part one. Obviously, you'd watch that before part two, I would assume. But yeah, let's just jump right into episode 8. The next episode starts back at the aftermath of the fire, and Mick identifies one of the burned bodies as TJ because in his hand was Olive's bracelet. The investigation has started, and the Xers are still a suspect, and Jared continues to be sus and says he doesn't think that they were involved. Ben's creepy-ass boss, or the leader of the Xers now, comes to the house to express his condolences and sneaks away to take some pictures and stumbles upon what I would consider the gold mine, which is Ben's wall in the garage. Jared attends another Xer meeting and gets in closer with the leader by giving him some information from the precinct. Zeke's frostbite continues to get worse, and Zombie wants to test on him to see if she can get rid of his blood marker too. And Ben is still stuck on the drawing of him from the Alzuris book. He goes to see it again and he starts hearing chants that kind of sound like some monks, I would say. He tries to convince Olive to go to his memorial site, but she still isn't emotionally ready for that. Ben goes to pay his respects to TJ and he starts hearing the chants again, and it leads him to a Buddhist monastery. And if you were paying attention earlier, TJ's mom was a Buddhist and he dabbled in the religion a little bit as well. So Ben assumes that they are supposed to perform this Buddhist ritual of erecting a shrine in TJ's name for closure. Olive still isn't ready, but she knows that it's what TJ would want. While this is happening, Mick and her new partner Makami bug the bar that the Xers frequent. And in diving into this, they confirm that Jared is at least involved with the Xers or possibly even a member. But Mick knows something is wrong. We cut back to Ben and Olive as they perform the ceremony, but he hears the chanting again and it's even louder this time. It leads him under the building and onto a pathway that leads under the nightclub. Now I'm pretty pissed that they killed TJ just to bring him back the very next episode, but hey, I'm just glad he's back in general. So it turns out that after he got away from Isaiah, he followed the chanting that led him away from the fire and the smoke, and the body they recovered was actually Isaiah's. He had just ripped TJ's bracelet off. The rest of the episode is filled out with Mick showing recorded conversations between Jared and the Xers to the police captain. There was a side story with Zombie and her ex-girlfriend, but ultimately what's important is that after she got rid of the blood marker and the callings, she's now blacking out and losing her memory. And we end with Zeke finally telling Mick that he's freezing to death. We start episode 9 back on the plane to when Cal saw the bright light out the window and said it's all connected. We jump back to him in present day where he's wandering around the house after a nightmare. Hey, looks like they decided he's important again. But we don't get any clues or visuals as to what the calling is, just a thunderstorm in the background as the scene abruptly cuts. Zeke is responding well to Zombie's experiments to get rid of the blood marker and callings to in turn get rid of his death date. We cut over to the stone house with the new guest TJ. Looks like he's living there for now, I guess, but this means more mythological research in general, and I just can't complain. Ben goes to wake up Cal, and he is straight tweaking, trying to build something that kind of looks like furniture, but remember, I said he has a tendency to just build or draw his callings instead of trying to explain them. Well, that's probably because he's a young child, but this is that. He can't remember exactly what the calling was, but he says it was from the night 828 went missing, and that he was there when it disappeared, apparently. Creepy Cal is at it again. The three main stories we follow for this episode are Sanvi, Cal's calling, and Mick being interrogated by Internal Affairs. So when Mick found out Jared hangs out with Xers, she went to start an investigation on him and use the information she heard on the wire they placed in the bar. But when Jared went to talk to the captain about what's going on, she's actually involved, and it turns out she knows everything also about the leader of the Xers, Ben's boss. Something way bigger is happening right now. But while Mick is talking to the investigators, they very quickly turn it on her and ask her everything they've wanted to ask since they got back, and now all of a sudden, she's facing jail time. Back at the lab with Sanvi and Zeke, we can see the experiments along with her not sleeping well has her straight tweaking. And Zeke can tell because he used to be an addict, he just knows something is wrong. I mean shit, last episode she was blacking out and losing her memory, and now she's spaced out like she's high off something. We go back to the stone house and Creepy Cal is still tweaking and he's trying to build a spider web of sorts that he said he saw the plane trapped in. Ben obviously jumps right on this because he, along with I think everybody, knows Cal knows something. But this is just stressing him out more. We check back in with Team Teenage Romance, and after reading more of Alzuris' book, they realize everything he experienced after returning lines up perfectly with the 828 passengers. The callings, the death date, everything. Alzuris even thought he could escape his own death date too. But this entire episode it has been thunderstorming outside, and Grace, Ben, and Cal never questioned it until Olive reveals it's bright and sunny outside. This means they have been inside a calling this entire time, and as they realize this, Ben ominously utters, "Something is coming." They look back into Alzuris' book and they start to piece everything together. Alzuris and his men were on a ship when they experienced strong thunderstorms just like the calling the stones are in now. But because they tried to get rid of the callings, aka what Zombie is doing, they all went mad on the boat and jumped overboard. Similar to how Cal is being a dick to everybody, TJ keeps blaming himself, Ben is agitated and yelling at everyone in the family, and to top it off, Grace is seasick. They are experiencing what Alzuris experienced years ago. See, this is where we're gonna have to go more in depth in a separate video, and that'll come after season 3, but I just need to move on and simplify so this video isn't way too long. Ben figures out what Cal thought was a spiderweb was actually the netting on a sailboat, meaning he has been trying to build Alzuris' boat this entire time. Jared notices the appointed lawyer Mick has been working with while she's being interrogated is an Xer as well, which causes him to want to go protect her by arresting her so he can't take her anywhere. Wait, so he's on Mick's side right now? Well, I'm just playing around, I know the answer, but You guys will have to wait. I gotta play along with it, you know. But while this is happening, Zombie had to call her ex because she's the only doctor who will know how to fix her, and as of now, she's just sedated and passed out. The episode ends with the Stone family plus TJ finally building the boat, and they are sent back to Alzurus' ship the night of the storm. And as they look up in the sky, they see Flight 828. So this could mean both the ship and the plane were sent to the same place for their respective times and experienced the same exact storm. After reading more of the book, it says they have to accept that it's all connected. The callings, Alzurus' ship, the death date, everything. And all of their past will lead to tragedy. Ben rightfully interprets this as Sonvi researching and experimenting on herself that in turn got rid of her callings. The camera pans over to the book, and in the drawing of the men on the ship, you can see a woman that eerily resembles her. Before the camera cuts to black, we go back to Mick and Jared, where before he locks her up, he tells her, "You need to shut up, I just saved your life." So, yeah, it looks like Jared is either undercover or simply would never let Mick get hurt, or probably both. Episode 10 is jam-packed, so I'll try and make it quick. Grace gets a calling of her by a river under a bridge, and a man screams, "Help me," so her and Ben go there, and they see Adrian, who had the same calling. While chasing him, Grace slipped and fell on the rocks, and it caused her to go into premature labor that resulted in the operation killing either her or the baby.
The baby! The baby! The baby! Let's go!
Heavy shit. While they go to the hospital, they find out there's a specialist for this kind of procedure that could save both Grace and the baby, except no one can find him. And we pan back to Adrian, who's still by the river when he hears the "help me" scream again, and it's a man in the river who fell off his kayak. You already know, yep, it's the specialist, and right as Ben makes the decision to save Grace over the baby, the specialist arrives and saves them both. Everyone is even more convinced of the calling except Adrian, who still believes they are brought back to be quote-unquote agents of the apocalypse. The other story we follow this episode is the whole Jared and Xers nonsense. So long story short, Jared was working undercover to stop them, and he had to be so convincing that Mick would believe it too, and obviously the audience as well. So now the captain and Jared inform Mick of the whole plan, but they need strong evidence to take down their leader, Ben's boss. Luckily enough, the bartender's brother captured Zeke because he knew that was Mick's man, and he calls Jared over so they can use him as bait to get Mick. Jared uses the bug to do this really cool sequence of him telling Mick and the captain over the wire the situation and when they should strike. They capture the leader and the brother, and it looks like the Xers are stopped for now. Throughout the whole episode, there were these three dark shadows that kept appearing. At first, Cal saw one on his drawing that manifested, get it, into three, and then later Adrian saw the same three shadows in an alleyway. And the episode ends with Cal seeing the three shadowy figures in his room. So clearly this is the new threat for these last couple episodes. But overall, this episode was extremely emotional, but hey, we got a new character, Baby Eden. For some reason, next episode we jump like 2 months in the future, and apparently Cal's been seeing these three shadows every night in his dreams. And this is causing Ben to start questioning the callings and start to believe what Adrian said about the callings being the work of false prophecies and that they were agents of the apocalypse. But during these last couple of months, Zeke has been getting worse and has been at the hospital with Zombie every day. This episode follows two main callings. TJ and Ben are led to the subway station where they stop a man from jumping in front of it. And they take him to the hospital, and one clue leads to another, and they find out that this man is Zeke's father, who he hasn't seen since his little sister died. Because Zeke's condition keeps getting worse and he is literally freezing to death, his counselor tells him he needs to forgive and get closure with those who have hurt him before he dies. This causes him to have a change of heart about the experiments and treatment and wants to stop so he can live out the rest of his days with Mick. Doesn't matter though, because someone at the hospital found out about what Zombie is doing, and now her license is revoked and all of her research is gone. This episode was also very emotional, but it was beautifully capped off with Zeke asking Mick to marry him. The other calling we follow through this episode is Mick stumbles across a kid who stole cold medicine from a bodega correctly assumed to be used to make meth. He gets away because Mick has a calling of "let him go." After they track him down through the bus surveillance, they find him, and he was actually paid by someone from the dark web to make this deal, kinda like a legal DoorDash if that makes sense. But after they question him, it leads her to this guy Jace, who just got out of jail for, you guessed it, selling meth. Her and Jared set up a classic Mr. and Mrs. Smith sting operation and catch not only Jace but his brother and the bus driver from the original deal. Jace tells Mick that she knows she can't stop him and that it's bigger than the both of them, suggesting he knows that the callings keep telling her to let him go. She's a cop first though, so they arrest the three, and the episode ends with Cal seeing the shadows, and when we pan over to the precinct we see that the three shadows were that of Jace, his brother, and the bus driver Corey. These are the three people Cal is being warned about. But I thought it was pretty interesting that they introduced this new big threat to close out the season with only a couple episodes left, as opposed to season 1 where it felt like it all led up to the final episode. I get that there have been hints of it sprinkled throughout, but it seems pretty separate to the rest of the season. Episode 12 starts out with the interrogation of Jason. He just knows something because he has like this deep hatred, this burning hatred for Mick just out of nowhere. But she needs to get ready for the wedding between her and Zeke as he continues to get worse, now having ice form around his skin. It turns out that the person who fired Zombie and locked her out of her office is a quote-unquote quote-unquote high-ranking government official, not her boss. And this obviously points right back to the Major. Just realized we haven't talked about her or that whole situation in a while. But back at the Stonehouse, they are setting everything up for the ceremony when Ben gets a calling, just a quick 5-second image of Flight 828 again. So he goes back to the airport and one of the passengers is there named Ward, who is also one of the inspectors of the flight, and he thinks it's somehow his fault for what happened because he thinks he could have missed something in the inspection. And to top it all off, he keeps getting the same calling of the plane exploding too. Ben finds the government record of the flight inspection and it proves the Ward guy didn't do anything wrong. Ben thinks that that's all the calling was meant to do until he has the same vision of the plane exploding as he leaves the building. He looks up and sees an old, boutique store or something. I don't really know what it is at the moment. Again, you guys know that I do know, I just have to play it up for this. We cut over to Jason and his crew as they're on the bus to prison, but of course we can't get rid of these characters, so they attack the guards by devising a fake seizure decoy and they get away. The majority of this episode leads up to the big wedding between Mick and Zeke, and it's honestly extremely emotional. Zeke at this point is probably my second favorite character behind Ben, and goddammit, the scene with his mom is just too much. After it all goes down and the tears have been wiped off, Sanvi finally gets a hold of Vancy Boy, and he thinks that Sanvi should just go off the grid and work with him because the Major seems to be tying up loose ends. The episode ends with Cal playing with some sparklers outside when the three dark shadows appear again, only this time it's Jace and his crew. The calling was a warning of Cal getting kidnapped this whole time. Jace calls Mick and he says he needs his stash or Cal's gonna die. Well, that honeymoon was pretty quick. And now for the grand finale of Season 2, Episode 13, Icing Conditions. We start the episode with Ben and Grace absolutely livid at Mick because when they thought about it, if Mick followed the let him go calling, Cal would have never been taken. But she can get to the evidence locker in the morning and tries to come up with a plan to get their meth back. And even though she and now Jared, because of course he comes to help, could get fired for doing this, they are ready to save Cal. While this is happening, Sanvi finds the Major through Vance to talk to her. She's desperately begging for her to help Zeke, but the Major is old school cold-blooded. Sanvi offered to help because she thought she had information the Major didn't, but she has been watching them throughout the entire season. She even said, "The wedding was beautiful, by the way." Damn, that shit was cold. But this is no use, and Sanvi just became even more of a target. Mick, Jared, and Mikami set up an exchange in public, but it goes south when a Karen gets involved and Jace runs off with Cal. It instantly gets back to the captain, and she says she will help if they do it her way. Jace took Cal back to his cabin in the woods, and off to the side you can tell Jace's brother is a nice guy and doesn't want to let Cal get hurt. Zeke has a calling of him in the wilderness and he finds Cal, and this gives everyone some hope, and out of nowhere Olive gets a text from an unknown number saying, "It's Cal, tell Mom and Doug I'm safe." And she interprets this as the diner called the Dugout that they used to go to and they named it Doug. They now at least have something to go off of. Sanvi is at her breaking point and she stalks down the Major and finds her at a park. She pulls a spy move and blows some dust in her face, and that causes her to go into anaphylactic shock and start to choke to death. Sanvi has the cure with her, but she says she needs to know how to save Zeke and the passenger before she saves her, and the Major fights for the bottle. It falls and breaks, and as they realize she's about to die, the Major says that there's no cure, and what's the point of a powerful mutation if you can't replicate it? Yeah, Sanvi just murdered the Major. But back to the hunt for Cal. So Zeke stays behind in the car because, well, he's almost dead, but he gets the calling of him finding Cal again and he decides to walk out anyway. He passes out and falls about 30 seconds after in the same place from the calling, but he gets back up though. Mick and Ben find the cabin and Jace is freaking out saying that they need to just kill Cal. His brother again is a nice guy and lets Cal loose, and now Jace is running after him. The chase leads to a frozen lake where everybody meets up. Lightning strikes, and as the ice breaks, Cal, Jace, his brother, and the other guy fall in. Zeke shows up and dives in and saves Cal, and after struggling enough to send the audience to a panic, he gets out but instantly dies right after. Easily the saddest death of the series so far. Can we just take a moment please for Zeke? Nah, come on, you've seen the show, you know what happens. As they're sitting there grieving, Zeke begins to glow and magically comes back to life. And after a nice little montage of everybody coming home, we jump back to Sanvi where she tells Vance what she did, and man, she is fucked, bro. As we end Season 2, the divers can't find Jace and his crew in the lake, alluding that they're gonna somehow come back. We cut to Ben and his family back at the house where he gets a calling of the plane exploding in midair and falling into the ocean. The final scene is a fishing boat out in the ocean where they find the wing of Flight 828 from the bottom of the water. What a cliffhanger. Wow, this season was for sure a lot more emotional than the first and definitely focused more on the drama aspect of the show this time around. Some key things to take away were the Xers were stopped, the Major is dead, Vance is back and helping Sanvi cover up her murder of the Major. Jace and his crew seem to have died, but their bodies haven't been found yet. Baby Eden is officially in the show, and Zeke survived the death date and now can live happily ever after with Mick. Well, at least for 5 more years. Again, I cannot stress this enough, but these videos are a total in-depth recap of everything that happened in the show, and I talk briefly about the theories to overall what the hell actually happened to Flight 828, but I will be making that video after we dive deep into Season 3. But the other main things to take away are that you clearly have to follow the callings or all other paths will lead to danger. We saw that with Sanvi's experiments that got rid of her callings and with Mick not letting Jace go. Whoever Alzuris was and whatever happened to him is the answer to all of this. The night Flight 828 went missing, they were in the same place Alzerus' boat was when they went through that same storm. He saw the plane in the sky but described it as a silver dragon because he didn't know what it was. And he too went missing but mysteriously came back and didn't age a day, and him and his men experienced callings and voices in their head hundreds of years before the passengers of Flight 828 did. And lastly, if the plane actually did explode and the wing the fisherman found was real and from Flight 828, did the passengers actually die and either they came back to life or this is a parallel universe? We will answer all these questions and more in future videos, so make sure to turn on that notification button and of course subscribe to this channel if you can. Anything helps. But thank you to all the new people who came from the first video. I know it's been like 6 months since I posted that, but I've been busy with a lot and I appreciate you guys for sticking around, and if you like this one as much as you like the first, I can guarantee you there will be more to come. So see you next time for season 3 of Manifest.